Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The Punchline, written by Infernalism. 3%. It doesn't sound like a lot, does it? A slight spill of your coffee, a few drops, the difference between A and an A+, a few square feet in your average room. But 3% of a galaxy, that's more than a few drops of coffee. That's what we have. Owls, by sheer, stupid luck, of evolving in a portion of space that inexplicably enough drives all other intelligent life insane. Which, if you look back upon our history as a species, it sort of makes sense, right? We managed to come into our own in one of the few spots in this overcrowded galaxy where a species had a chance to grow, unimpeded and unbothered by anything other than ourselves. You all know the story already. I'm not going to bother with that, other than to touch upon a few details that our illustrious military and diplomatic corps continue to ignore and sidestep whenever possible. Those details you can be sure I'll be touching on. Don't you worry. This story is not about us, you and me, and the others listening in. Well, it's not strictly about us. It's how we barged onto a crowded stage, fumbled our way into a roll of demons and monsters, and somehow managed to buy into our own hype. When the decision was made to play into the outside species' fear of us and where we came from, there were objections. But there were always objections. The good thing about being able to develop and colonize thousands of empty worlds was that whenever people disagreed, at the very worst, they could just pull up in stakes and go find fresh worlds to develop. With FTL warp travel and the sheer immensity of our little corner of hell, there was never enough tension to force a real conflict for any reason. Not for 1,000 years. Until it happened, I mean. Sure, there were pirates and smugglers, but military assured us we could handle them easily enough. And we could, too. So much so that after this insane charade began, our pirates and raiders stopped pestering our worlds and focused almost primarily in the outer species. And we let them. Hell, we found out later that a good number of the military quietly encouraged it, as it fed our wicked reputation and resulted in all sorts of illicit things coming back into our space. In the beginning, we had spread rumors of our slavers with black ships foraying into the ragged wider universe. After a few hundred years, it wasn't a rumor anymore. See, we never had to worry about anything. It was ridiculous. We had 1,000 years' worth of technology advantage over them, all of them. The raiders and pirates would ride out on their black ships, stolen or bought from some bored little military world behind the lines of a hellscape, loot and plunder and burn and pillage, and then escape back into our space, where they were safe from any and all reprisal. And our military, the grand navy of the United Terror, they were always too far away. Again, it fed our reputation for being monsters from the blackest and deep space, and it kept their hands clean and kept the raiders away from our worlds. What were the raiders really facing? What were we facing? Outdated, outmodded, ragged, scrabbled together heaps of obsolete tech. And I'm not talking about just the dregs, all of them, every last stinking species out there. You've all been educated about space outside our own. You've heard the stories, I'm sure. But the stories don't really prepare you for the tangled mess of life out there. Every planet, every moon, every star system, every asteroid belt, it's all occupied by more species than you can possibly imagine. Thousands of different kinds of people, and they're all looking for a place to live, to grow, to have a home. But there's just not enough room. There were so many walls that almost no one kept track, and those that did, they didn't really care. It was predictable. It was depressingly, disgustingly common. Some poor sap of a species would get kicked off their world by some other species who came along with dirty nuclear weapons, mass drivers, biological and chemical weapons, all but ruining the already horribly irradiated world. Because that first species stole it from poor sap of a species with the same types of weapons. So, you got those massive, hulking, creaking, half-broken world ships floating through warp and showing up randomly at some new world that's already overpopulated and all but wrung dry of resources, and immediately go to genociding whatever species was in residence so they could take it for themselves. I spent 20 years in the Galactic Council in that stupid power armor, pointlessly listening and doing nothing for thousands of species that came before the Council, begging for some kind of help. Sure, we'd offer to trade, but help outright. They never asked, and when I finally couldn't stand it anymore and went offering, all but throwing the offer to them, they all ran away, terrified of the Terrans. That was our grand offering to the galaxy. Don't screw with the Terrans, it's almost funny. You know, there's a whole industry now devoted to maintaining the joke. We know exactly how far into space that the other species can listen and see with their primitive tech. So some joker decided to set up tons of derelict ships, Terran and alien alike, deck them out in ragged black outfits like the pirates use, and set up automated battles where the alien ships get attacked and either destroyed or boarded, whereupon tapes play the most horrific noises, screams and whatnot, all to impress upon our neighbors to stay the fuck out. They even gave it a name, Hellspace. It was enough to drive a man to retire, and retire to some inner world far from the borders. Have him focus on crops and not the broken galaxy outside. I was already looking up at different agrarian worlds when I got the newest reports of pirate raiders again. Again, raiding more of our neighbors, burning and pillaging. And for some ungodly reason, even though I'd heard it all 1,000 times before, this time it really, really got to me. I mean, these things that had been raided, I don't even remember their name, whatever they were called, and no one bothered to write it down. They're humanoid, green pasty things, barely 3 feet tall. Pointy ears, little tinkerer things that salvage debris fields in their pre-FTL craft. The raiders came in, burned them all, and then warped back out again. Other races were already in the process of looting those ships and burning worlds for salvage before the raiders finished warping out. I remember thinking, for the first time, this is our legacy? Is this what we're meant to be? Bullies and thugs who either took what they wanted from people who couldn't stop them or willfully looked away as they did so because it profited us. They didn't even look at me when I abruptly got up and left the council table. Terrans had bullied their way into a seat on the council 3 centuries ago when we'd first fumbled onto the scene, and we'd been quietly resented ever since. So not a single one of them cared when I left. But they all took notice when shot a message back to them that the Terrans were giving up their seat for good. The Alliance had always been a loose-knit organization, more focused around organizing the steady expansion of humanity outwards from Earth. But for the last 300 years, its most important task had been mapping out the full true extent of Earth's space, that being the space that we can live in, and no one else can without going insane. It wasn't hard to do, but again, 3% of the galaxy is immense, so it wasn't much of a government as the galaxy's largest zoning board. Military worlds, agrarian worlds, city worlds, architect worlds, worlds devoted to education, science, music and art. Every single possible devotion has a world of its own, and that's not counting the moons, the stations, the mining colonies. Thousands of worlds, hundreds of thousands of moons and other habitats. Most of them didn't have the slightest clue what went on outside our space, and they didn't care to learn either. I wasted so many years trying to convince them that we couldn't keep doing this, and in the end, it was nothing more than sheer luck that finally got their attention. Well, luck for us, unlucky for the Crash. Remember how I told you how crowded things were outside? Every single star system, every rock belt, gas giant. From the records we managed to piece together after it was all over, they'd been displaced 27 times in the last 300 years. They'd gone from a species of about 10 million to just under 50,000. From what we understand, they had been poets and builders once, which made them prime targets for just about every species out there. This last time, they were in the process of traveling along a border of our space, aimlessly wandering, I think, when a band of Terran pirates came along. They didn't even rob them. They just drove the whole lot of them, about 16 unarmed ships, packed to the gills with Crash, into Terran space and kept them until they all went mad and slaughtered each other. It took 3 days. A military outpost was close enough to listen in and, despite having every reason not to do so, released the whole video onto the Weave. I don't know what their reasoning was, only that the Navy had them all sacked for releasing the video. Even the outer species got their hands on the video, and their unified response to the sadism was one of great massive shrug. Don't piss off the Terrans. Don't go near Terran space. One more story to spread around. And the pirates. Even today, we don't know who they are. But we do know the Koresh. I don't know what shook us the worst, the video of their bloodshed or the overwhelming indifference that had inspired in a good portion of our people. They took it all in, stoic instead, and when it was done, turned back to their own interests again. We'd spent centuries frantically searching for other life, to know that we weren't alone in the universe. only to find evidence that we were alone, in a vast galaxy where we alone resisted the urge to destroy others and ourselves, only to stumble into a greater galaxy that seemed intent on destroying others and themselves. And rather than fight off that mantle of wickedness that had been cast upon us, we simply bought into it because it was easier, because it would take time and effort to prove ourselves. And now, after so long of living with that reputation, we'd simply accepted it as what we were. We'd truly become mythological demons that they thought we were. I imagine that things would have stayed that way, perhaps forever, if two friends hadn't reminded me of two very different but equally important things. One, science is fucking amazing, and two, demons are only half our mythology. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.